Imagine hiring someone to protect your life, and that same person decides to end it. Not a stranger, not an enemy. The man standing right next to you, sword at his side, sworn by blood and oath to keep you alive. That is exactly what happened to one of the most powerful men who ever lived. And the story of how it happened and why is one of the darkest, most fascinating chapters in all of human history. His name was Commodus. And by the time his bodyguards walked into his bedroom that night, Rome was already holding its breath. To understand why they killed him, you have to understand who he was and who he thought he was, which are two very different things. Commodus was born in 161 AD, the son of Marcus Aurelius, a man widely considered the greatest emperor Rome ever produced. A philosopher, a warrior, a man who ruled with discipline, wisdom, and restraint. His son inherited none of it. From the moment Commodus took the throne at just 19 years old, something felt wrong. He had the title of emperor. He had the army. He had the entire Roman world at his feet. But what he actually wanted, what he craved, deep in whatever was left of his soul, was the roar of a crowd. Commodus did not want to be an emperor. He wanted to be a gladiator. This is not a metaphor. This is not symbolic. The man would actually descend into the Colosseum, the most famous arena on earth, strip off his imperial robes, pick up a sword, and fight. Sometimes against animals. Sometimes against men who had been deliberately disarmed or handicapped beforehand so that the emperor could look invincible. He fought over 700 times. And every single time, Rome watched in a mixture of horror and disbelief. But here is the detail that nobody talks about. It was not just ego. Commodus had renamed himself. He no longer went by Commodus. He had declared himself the reincarnation of Hercules, the demigod son of Jupiter, and demanded that everyone around him treat him as such. He wore a lion skin. He carried a club. He had statues built of himself in the Hercules pose spread across the empire. And if you refused to acknowledge him as a god, people found out what happened. Quietly, permanently, while Commodus played warrior god in the arena, the actual running of Rome fell to his advisors and prefects. The empire did not collapse immediately. Rome was too large, too structured for one man's madness to bring it down overnight. But it was bleeding. Slowly, surely, resources were being wasted. The treasury was shrinking. The military felt humiliated. And the Senate, the most powerful political body in Rome, was being treated with the kind of contempt that powerful men tend not to forget. And then, Commodus did something that crossed a line nobody had crossed before. He announced that he was going to rename Rome itself. The eternal city built over 1,000 years would now be called Colonia Commodiana, his colony. His name on the greatest civilization in human history. He also renamed the 12 months of the Roman calendar after himself and his various titles. January became Amazonius. November became Exupratorius. He was rewriting the very fabric of Roman time. That was the moment the people closest to him began to talk. The conspiracy did not form in some shadowy backroom. It formed in the palace. Among the people who ate with him, walked with him, and had watched him spiral for years. His own mistress, a woman named Marcia, was among the first to decide that enough was enough. She had witnessed things that would never be written in official histories. She had survived his unpredictable rages. And she had received information, reliable, terrifying information that Commodus had written a list. When that list was discovered, everything changed. It was a list of names, people he intended to execute. And Marcia's name was on it. So was the name of Eclectus, his chamberlain, the man who managed the emperor's personal affairs and had access to every room in the palace. And so was the name of Latus, the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, the very men whose entire purpose was to protect Commodus with their lives. The three of them read that list. And then they looked at each other. They decided to act on New Year's Eve 192 AD. Commodus was preparing for a grand spectacle. The following day he planned to emerge from a gladiator's cell at the Colosseum and begin the new year not as emperor, but as champion of the arena. The humiliation would have been complete. Rome's ruler, dressed as a fighter, crawling out of a dungeon to perform for the crowd. Marcia prepared a cup of wine. She laced it with poison. And she handed it to Commodus herself, with the same hands that had poured his drinks 1,000 times before. He drank it. And then something went wrong. The poison was working, but not fast enough. Commodus began vomiting, which purged some of what he had swallowed. He was weakened, but conscious. He was confused, but alive. And the longer he stayed alive, the greater the chance that he would realize what was happening. And who had done it? Marcia and Eclectus knew that if he survived even for an hour, none of them would see morning. So they sent for Narcissus. Narcissus was Commodus's personal wrestling trainer, a man who spent his days in the emperor's private chambers, who knew every routine, every pattern, every vulnerability. A man who was physically powerful, trusted completely, and had no idea what he was walking into. They told him what they needed. And Narcissus, for reasons history has never fully explained, agreed. He walked into the bedroom alone. Commodus was on the floor, disoriented from the poison, barely able to stand. The most powerful man in the world, the self-declared son of Jupiter, the god emperor of Rome, was helpless. And the man standing over him was his trainer, someone he had laughed with, sparred with, trusted with his physical body for years. Narcissus wrapped his hands around Commodus's throat and strangled him. Just like that. 12 years of madness ended on a cold marble floor in a palace bedroom on the last night of the year. No battle, no army, no declaration of war. The Roman Empire had just changed hands in the most intimate and brutal way imaginable, killed not by barbarians at the border, not by political rivals in the Senate, but by the people who were supposed to love him. Here is what makes this story haunt me. Commodus was not born a monster. Early accounts describe him as a cheerful, enthusiastic child, eager to please his father, interested in the world around him. Marcus Aurelius, for all his wisdom, had broken one of his own rules. He had passed power to his biological son instead of choosing the most qualified successor, the way emperors before him had done. It was perhaps the one great failure of a great man, and Rome paid for it with 12 years of chaos. There is also the question of whether Commodus was entirely sane. Modern historians and psychologists have looked at his behavior, the obsession with Hercules, the rages, the profound disconnect from reality, and suggested that he may have suffered from a serious mental illness that nobody around him had the language or the understanding to diagnose. The man was not simply evil. He was broken, in a way that the ancient world had no tools to fix. And so instead of healing him, they killed him. The Senate declared him a public enemy the very next day, erasing his name from public records, tearing down his statues, reversing every renaming he had imposed. Rome went back to being Rome. The months went back to their original names. The Colonia Commodiana was gone almost before the ink was dry. But you cannot erase what happened. The soldiers who watched their emperor play dress-up in the arena never forgot. The senators who were humiliated and threatened never forgot. And the lesson that the Praetorian Guard quietly learned, that they had the power to remove an emperor if they chose to, would echo through Roman history for centuries. They would do it again. And again. And again. The men who were supposed to protect the throne had discovered that they could also destroy it. And once that door opened, it never fully closed. So the next time you are tempted to think that power is stable, that institutions are permanent, that the people at the very top are untouchable, remember a cold Roman bedroom on the last night of 192 AD. Remember a man who called himself a god, lying on the floor while his trainer's hands closed around his throat. Remember that every empire, every dynasty, every system of power has people inside it who are watching, waiting, and quietly deciding how long they are willing to stay loyal. History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. And right now, it is rhyming louder than most people realize. If this story got under your skin, if you want to know which emperor came next and how the chaos that followed Commodus set Rome on a path it would never fully recover from, subscribe to History Beyond. Hit the bell so you never miss a story the textbooks decided to leave out. And tell me in the comments, do you think Commodus was evil? Or was he simply a broken man in a position nobody should have given him? I read every single comment. I will see you in the next one.